From Evoke Media, I'm Sabrina Mirage Naeem. With me is Cassia Binkowski, and this is Breaking Glass, a series of conversations with women around the world who are shattering glass ceilings and challenging social norms. They are audacious, gutsy, and their stories are echoed across borders and generations in a rallying cry that is changing the narrative for women everywhere. Today we're talking about periods. Menstruation is something that more than half of the global population deals with, and yet is still so taboo to talk about. We're joined by Michaela Bedard, Executive Director of Period. She's leading one of several organizations working to end period poverty around the world through advocacy, education, and access to information.
Sabrina, I love when our guests are tackling those things that nobody wants to talk about. Periods, tampon tax, the stigma around menstruation. It's about time we're having these conversations, and it's really an honor to have Michaela on the show to share the work that her team is doing to bring attention to the issue.
We're talking about patriarchy, legislation, sex education, as well as what it is going to take to create cultural shifts for the next generation of menstruators. This topic is messy and it's real. Michaela tackles it head on. Take a listen. Michaela, thank you so much for joining us today on a topic which is truly near and dear to my heart and frankly impacts half the population of the world. So it's important and we need to talk about it. Thank you for being with us.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
So I'd like to hear a little bit about your story. Where did you come from? What shaped you? And how did you come to care so passionately and ultimately professionally about menstruation equity?
I know, it's a funny career to be in, right? I've spent the last 15, 20 years of my professional life in various political and advocacy roles. And I think I realized by my mid-30s that the through line to all of my advocacy is women and working for the most marginalized women. Women that have been pushed to the outskirts of society for systemic reasons that really have nothing to do with them or their lived experience. It's something that is put on them. And I think that once that really came to be my clear understanding, that more than just calling myself progressive and working for left-wing causes and working to support homeless women, once I realized that actually what I really cared about was talking about the deep systemic reasons that women are pushed to the margins, then it became clear what I wanted to do. And that paired with my deep belief that civic engagement and getting people to talk about these issues is in itself the solution to a lot of these issues, led me to learn a lot about period poverty and inspire me to help this next generation of leaders tackle these issues, talk about these issues in a way that is not taboo, that they don't shy away from. And so I was honored and humbled to be hired as executive director of Period. It is an incredible organization focused on eradicating period poverty, but doing it through a youth leadership lens, getting young people to be involved in this movement to solve period poverty in their lifetimes. It's just a total honor.
So on a global scale, and we'll get into this in a little bit more detail, but the impact of menstruation on women's lives and on the lives of transgender and non-binary individuals who also menstruate is tremendous. And we're going to break that down in a minute, but I'm curious to hear you speak right away about what does menstruation inequity and period poverty mean to you?
So period poverty is the very simple problem of not being able to have access to or afford menstrual supplies, being forced to make a decision between other essential supplies and menstrual supplies. And the fact that period poverty exists is systemic because it comes from patriarchal systems, from centuries of non-menstruators being in decision-making places, so that the idea of essential supplies being menstrual goods didn't come into the equation, right? When non-menstruators think of essential goods, they think of shelter. They even might think of things like soap, right? They think of food, they think of family and community. Menstrual supplies are not on the list of a non-menstruator's thoughts, right? Of what's essential supplies. And so period poverty is something that happens when menstruators have to make the choice between two essential goods. And oftentimes they will choose to put food on the table for their family or keep themselves clean in other ways because they think that this is something that can just be hidden, that they can deal with by using other kinds of supplies that might not be hygienic or remove themselves from school or work or family or sports when they're going through their menstruation because they don't have the proper supplies to deal with it. And what we need to be able to say really proudly now is that menstruation is just a big part of life. It's quite literally a quarter of your life for the many years that you're a menstruator, right? It's a week out of every month. And to need to suffer from shame or a lack of dignity or needing to remove yourself from other aspects of your life for a biological process is totally unjust. So when you think of like just the fact of poverty on a global scale, and then period poverty is something that's just not talked about nearly as much.
Yeah, and a term that I think probably so many people have never heard, are not aware of. And I want to talk about that shame for a minute because I have this visual of the history being, when you start your period, you get banished to the mud hut and free bleed into the dirt for a week, right? Because you are now unclean. You are, so the stigma and the shame that exists and that is endured by girls and women around the world is real. And I actually really appreciate that you're saying that your organization starts with teenagers because I think that's where it starts, right? You have to try and peel away all of that shame among younger people so that when they grow up, they don't feel that stigma. But it does exist. It's very real. And I think I speak for most women in industrialized countries when I say that we've all hid tampons up our sleeves. We've had nightmares of public leakage. Like that is a trauma-inducing, thing during our youth and still as adults. Do you remember feeling that same shame as a girl?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I have a memory of being in middle school and my period coming in the middle of math class and not having the product and having to like put my sweatshirt around my waist and run to the nurse's office, who in my school shared the office with the front desk lady, the secretary of the school. So I'm going up there and I'm like whispering that I need a product and feeling embarrassed about it. And I think that that's something that we always brushed off as like just a coming of age story. But that's crazy. Schools provide soap, they provide toilet paper. They do their best to make sure that kids aren't bullied. They do their best to make sure that kids are fed. They do their best to even provide a nurse to make sure that kids are cared for. Why is it that this thing that a quarter of the middle school menstruators were going through it on a given day is something that was so taboo and shameful? I even remember in college being a 20-year-old student and dropping my purse and having tampons fall out and being so embarrassed.
So embarrassed. Yeah, right. So anecdotally, and this is, I think, a lesson for all mothers out there of daughters. As a teenager, I really struggled with this. I hated it. It was like there was a week out of every month that I was just in a foul mood and I was so upset. Like, why? I would call it the curse, which is also historically something that we say, the curse. And I really was in that negative mental frame of mind. And one day, my mom takes me out to lunch and she gives me a necklace that she made for me out of turquoise, which is such a healing kind of spiritually, it's a very spiritually powerful stone. And she said, from now on, every time you get your period, I want you to wear this necklace. And remember the power of being a woman.